I got into the field October 30th of 2012, and there it's just getting into summer, and to me that's winter, fall, winter. And we had to get up at 4:30 in the morning because we were in the MTC is in the Sao Paulo North mission, so we were just like a 45-minute drive to our mission from the MTC. And we heard of other missionaries that are going to like João Pessoa, Recife, Santa Maria, other missions that are thousands of miles apart. They have to get up at like 6:30, 5:30 to get to the airport, to get to their flight, to go to their new mission. And we thought, oh man, our mission is just like 45-minute drive. We're going to get to sleep in and pack, take it easy. No, we have to wake up earlier than everybody else. We woke up at 4:30 in the morning to get to the mission home. So we're all asleep in the van, trying to maintain. So we get to the mission home in the Sao Paulo East mission. And then we get into this hallway and we just sit there waiting for President to come and interview us. And other missionaries that are coming there for the transfer day are trickling in like, oh, where are you from? You like to walk? You know, trying to scare us. And we're sitting there trying to speak Portuguese. And I had gotten 2 packages from my mom. She asked me, like, while I was in the MTC, is there anything else you need? And I said, yeah, send me all this food and all this stuff. So she sent me, I had 2 packages waiting for me. So that was probably the highlight of the day right there. It was great getting in the mission field, but it was a long day. But we get our interview with President, and we get to interview him for like 7 minutes because he has so many missionaries to get to, and he has so many other things, and your head's just spinning around. You don't know what's going on. It's your first day. You're like a fish out of water. And so you get your mission companion, your trainer. He would call all the trainers in to his office and all the new missionaries. And he would stand you in a circle and he would point, okay, you, Elder McKinnon, are going to be companions with Elder Squire. And then all the other missionaries would make a tunnel out of his door, out the hall, out of the mission home. And they would have their hands above you. And as soon as you both walked out, they would start hitting you on the head, just patting you like, oh, screaming the whole way. And everyone's going, congratulations, congratulations. And it was great. You would run outside, grab your bags, and there you go. You're gone. And so I am wearing my suit coat, carrying my 2 bags, and I got transferred to an area called Continental in Guarulhos. It's the second biggest city in Sao Paulo. And little did I know how far away it was. It was about 2 hours away by bus and train and metro, and you're just so tired. I get on the bus and I just instantly, I just fall asleep. I was so tired. I was excited but tired, and so we get there. We get off the bus, and we have to walk up these 3 huge hills. And I'm carrying my suit coat, my backpack, luggage, packages, and I'm just sweating bullets. It is hot. We climb up. We finally get to our apartment, and I'm just about ready to fall on the floor. And he's like, "All right, we'll unpack later. We have an appointment." So I just turn around, grab my backpack, and we take off. It's our first lunch appointment. And by this time, it's actually like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. But he had called the members saying that we were going to be late. And I was famished. I was hungry. And we get there, and I thought she was expecting like a ton of people because there was so much food. And I'm like, okay, there's going to be a party here. They're all expecting me. This is great. No, it was just me, him, and the family. And there's about 3 people in the family, and she made food for 15 people. And in Brazil, it's custom to, if you don't eat a lot of their food, they think you didn't like it. And so I'm sitting there trying to pile on as much of this food as I can. And the diet is rice, beans, and meat. And they fill you up real quick. So I'm sitting there on my 3rd or 4th plate. And she's like, Elder, do you want more? And in Portuguese, to say I'm full, you can say eu estou satisfeito, which I am satisfied, or eu estou cheio, I am full. And I learned eu estou cheio, I'm full. But what I said is eu estou chato, I said I am annoying. And then I said it, and she looks at me, smiles, and I go look at my companion. He starts laughing. I go, I said the wrong thing. I said I'm annoying. And I said, no, I'm full. Thank you so much. And she pushed another plate in my face, and I ate that. And on a heavy stomach, and you have to walk back up these hills, and I am just tired. We get back to the apartment, or try to meet the bishop. Didn't meet the bishop. Trying to make a contact. Holy cow, it was a whirlwind of a day. I get back to the apartment, and I try to unpack my things, get organized, and little did I know my companion gave me the bed that was full of bugs. I didn't know that at the time. And so we go to bed that night. I wake up the next morning, and I am just, it looks like a checkerboard of bite marks on my legs. And I woke the next morning, I go, man, this is the mission. Here we go. But it was great. I loved it. Well, when I was about 2 weeks before leaving the MTC, it was when President Monson came out in the General Conference and the mission age changed. And so for elders it turned to 18 years old, and for sisters 19 years. And so when I got into the mission field, there was about, I think, 160 missionaries in the mission field, and about 30 of those were just sister, maybe 20, and the rest were elders. But by the time I left, there was 270 missionaries, and about 80 to 90 of those were sister missionaries. And so it just blew up. Everyone started, and it was great. It was great to see the excitement in these new missionaries as they came into the mission field. But in the Sao Paulo East Mission, it used to go from the city of Sao Paulo, the eastern half of the city. It would go about, I wish I had a map to draw it for you, but it would go all the way out to the coast to the litoral, the beach, and it would go all the way up to a place called Guarachinguetá. And it would come back over to Guarachinguetá, just miss Campinas, and come back down to Sao Paulo. So it was like a rectangle. But halfway through my mission, actually about a quarter of the way through my mission, they took out the beach part of our mission all the way down, and they created a whole new mission. And that was, I think, the 8th mission I think they created in the state of Sao Paulo. But there are 2 temples in the state of Sao Paulo. The one's in Sao Paulo, where all the missionaries would go to when they're in the MTC, or if they're in the Sao Paulo mission. And then there's Campinas. I went to Campinas once when I was in the MTC because they were cleaning the Sao Paulo temple. But for the majority of my mission, we always went to the Sao Paulo temple because it was the closest. In my mission, there were, I think, 10 zones. And it was pretty consistent to one zone, there was a stake. And in that stake, it depended on how many wards there were. But it was on the average of 3 wards per, 3 to 4 wards per stake. And there were a few branches in my last zone. There was 2 branches. And whoever was usually the bishop of these branches or wards, it was the pioneering family for how the church started in that area. And I remember in my second area, the bishop and his family had been there forever. And it was his father and his father, and they had really helped the church grow in San Miguel Paulista. And it wasn't he was called to be the bishop because his family had brought the church to that area. No, it was because he was the most worthy and able man to be the bishop. But you could tell there are very different families, and their families down there are huge. So like, you ask, hey, where are you going? He's like, oh, I'm going to my second cousin twice removed's house, and they're very connected. Doesn't matter how distantly related you are, they are big on family. And so at any activity, any family home evening, there would be at least 25 people there that were already members of the church, that were there to help you with your investigator. And so everyone in our mission would frequent the Sao Paulo temple. But my last zone, it's the zone farthest away from the mission home. They would go to the Campinas temple, which is about 2.5 hours away. And so that's how the geographical makeup. And the church, in Sao Paulo, they would either call it the Salt Lake City of Brazil, either that or Florianopolis, because there was 2 temples and 9 missions in Sao Paulo, the state. And so the church there is very strong. And they do have EFY there, but they call it something different every single year. It's either FESUY or some kind of program. And the youth there really love the missionaries. They love to help, and they bring their friend. I would talk to missionaries here in the States, and I was like, so how would you get someone to go to church? And they were like, okay, well, first we would go to a member's house. We would make the invitation. We would ask them we would follow up to see if they had actually invited that person, if the person was going to go to church. And they had about 13 or 14 or 15 steps to get someone to go to church. And they would ask, oh, how was it like in Brazil? I was like, oh, well, we would ask someone to bring themselves to church, and they would bring a friend, and we would meet the friend at church. We would ask them for their phone number, their address, and make an appointment to meet with that person the same day at church, and then we'd go meet them after church. And they would just look at me stunned. You did that? You were that, what's the word? Abrupt or frank with that person? I was, yeah, that's how they are with the church. They are very open to religion in Brazil. I think in my entire mission, I think I met about 3 people that did not believe in a supreme being or a deity. And so church for them down there, they can always point our church out because it's the most beautiful one with the little tower. They would always call it a temple. We're like, oh, that's just our church. If you really want to see something beautiful, you go to one of our temples. And that's how the church really is different in Brazil. You know what a favela would be like, kind of like a slum sort of thing, kind of like a ghetto. And when you say you're from the east side of Zona Leste, they go, oh, they would say Corinthians. It's a soccer team down there. And I could closely resemble the Corinthians with probably the Oakland Raiders. If you could make that comparison of the fan base that the Oakland Raiders have, picture that, but a million times worse or better, depending on the way you're looking at it, with this soccer team. And they would instantly think, oh, you're from the east side, you're a Corinthian, aren't you? And I would always take my name tag and I find a sticker of the soccer team on the back, and I go, yeah, I'm a Corinthian. They go, oh, okay, all right, yeah, you're a good guy. And they were in Itaquera, this city that was a pretty interesting little city. It was dangerous, but it was a lot of fun. And that's where the Corinthians were based out of. And so because of the poverty of this people, they latched onto that soccer team, and whatever they did, they lived for that soccer team. And you saw full body tattoos of this soccer team. They lived through the soccer team. And there was this arch rival of Sao Paulo football club that they hated. They would fight in the streets. I mean, you couldn't go to a soccer game. You could tell a soccer game was going on because the fireworks were going off. People were honking horns whenever someone made a goal. And because so I think my east side of that mission, it was based around the soccer team of the Corinthians. It was, if you serve there, you're going to know the Corinthians. It's just outside the actual city limits of the big city of Sao Paulo. Like, there are like smaller cities, they call them bairros, which would be like a neighborhood, but it's on a larger scale. But the major one I would have served in is Guarulhos. It's where the international airport is. And so we would see airplanes taking off and landing. And my trainer only had a few months left, and he was like, this is the worst area to finish your mission in because there's just airplanes going everywhere. But I served in Guarulhos. I served in a city called Guaratinguetá. It's a pretty big city in the north of Sao Paulo, the state of Sao Paulo. Another pretty busy city was São Miguel Paulista. So these cities aren't, you can consider them cities, but everyone thinks of Sao Paulo, the city. You think you're actually in the city of Sao Paulo, but there is a different, Sao Paulo, like the city of Sao Paulo would be like an L shape, and Guarulhos would be in the L, like the crook of the L, and then all these other cities were outlying cities. So my biggest ones were probably Guarulhos and Guaratinguetá. Probably bull's intestines with cow's tongue cooked in it. That one is called fripo. And I got there, and the members were like, all right, Elders, are you hungry? And there was about 6 of us. We were on a division, and she's just, yep. She's like, all right, good. And we started eating. And we were all Americans. I think there was one Argentinian, and we're just eating all this. We ate everything. And she says, do you guys know what you just ate? And no, but it was good. She's like, well, it was bull's intestine with cow's tongue cooked in it. And we're like, one elder just got up and left the room. But that was probably the most exotic or crazy food. So yeah, bull's intestine, cow's tongue cooked in the middle of it. I was in a favela. It was a P day. We were going after a young man we were teaching. We were going to go play soccer with him at the church. And so we're just in our street clothes, and I had my clip-on name tag. And I was running down the hill first. My companion was right behind me. And we're running down this favela. And we get down to the very bottom of the hill. And this gangster stops us, and he has his gun right here. And he goes, "Whoa, what are you guys doing? Why are you running?" And we're like, "Oh, we're just going to go meet, Pedro over there. We're going to go play soccer." He's like, "We almost just shot you." And I go, well, first of all, I take a step back, and I go, "No, what?" He's like, "Yeah, we almost shot 2 white guys running down our favela. You think we're not going to shoot you guys?" And he says, we're like, "Oh, I am so sorry. We will never do it again. I'm sorry." And he says, "The only reason we did it was because we saw your name tag glint in the sun." And he remembered that we were the missionaries. And I look over to his side, and he has about 6 other guys, all with their guns, ready to kill. And he turns, "No, they're fine. They're the missionaries." And they're like, "Oh man, sorry, I didn't mean to. We were going to shoot you." And my heart is going a million miles a minute. So that was probably the most dangerous. And that one scared me quite a bit. But my last area, we were in Taubate, and we had this less active member had come back to church, and it was towards the end, like the last Sunday of a transfer, and my companion was going to be transferred, and we're like, "Okay, well, we got her name and number," and she says, "I want you to come back and meet my family." And we did. My companion got transferred. I got a new companion. We taught this family, and there was her, she was the mom, her 2 kids, and her husband. And we started teaching them, and they started coming to church. And the 2 kids, Gabrielle and Giovanna, they were baptized. They had come to church activities variously throughout their lives, but they were 13 and 15 years old. And so they knew a couple of the youth in the ward, but no one knew the husband, Jose Walter. And so the first Sunday he came was the Sunday that they got baptized. And in a Brazilian home, the buck stops with him. He's the patriarch, and he will protect his household. But this man was great. And so, but we didn't really pressure him into coming to church. We invited him consistently. And so finally he came to church to watch his children's baptism, and felt the Spirit so strong because it was so full in the baptism. There was so much love. And I remember baptizing Gabriel, and I remember baptizing him, putting him underwater and bringing him back out. And I looked up and I see his dad just staring at us and crying. And I knew at that moment that he was going to accept this gospel. I didn't know how long it was going to take or who was going to be able to do it, but I knew that he was going to accept this gospel, and that he was going to be able to make his family an eternal family. And lo and behold, 3.5 months later, with a little bit of nudging and prodding and lots of love, he was baptized. And I remember going in right before we were going to invite him to be baptized. We were about to walk through the gate, and I said to my commander, "Oh no, let's pray real quick. Let's have a quick prayer so we can have the Spirit with us to talk to Jose Walter." And we prayed, and we go in, and the first thing he says, "Elders, I've been reading the Book of Mormon." And that just was a signal. We looked at each other, kind of gave each other a fist bump behind our backs, and we knew that he was going to be baptized. And so he quit drinking coffee, kept the word of wisdom, kept all the other commandments, and was baptized two weeks later. And now his family is preparing to be sealed in the temple. I'm actually going back in June to watch the sealing of his family. How to love somebody without really knowing who they are. Just to see them with that Christ-like love. To not see them holding a beer and smoking a cigarette with no shirt on in front of their house and just instantly judge them, saying, "Oh, they're not going to be baptized," or "They're not going to accept this gospel." That to try and see them as Christ would see them, as a son or daughter of our Heavenly Father and our brother and sister. So that's what I learned, I think, the most, was to see not how they were at that moment, but to see how they could be with this gospel in their lives. I learned how to play the harmonica on my mission. I had one companion who played, and I was like, "Man, I am not musically talented at all." And I was like, "I bet you I could play the harmonica." So I bought one and I started playing it, and now I can play a few tunes on the harmonica. Oh man, I was in my second area, and I was on a division with the zone leader, and he was in a place called Jardim Romano, And there, it's kind of like Utah. The streets are in a grid system, square blocks. So it's very easy to get around, but it doesn't drain out as well. It doesn't drain out at all, actually. And it was in the rainy season. And so when it rained there, it rained for like 4.5 days straight, nonstop torrential downpour. And in this little city, it didn't drain, so the streets just started flooding. And so I'm on this division with the zone leader, and there is absolutely nobody in the streets because the water was up to our thighs. So we're literally wading through this water trying to get into people's home because it's just miserable out there. So waist-high water, that was probably the craziest, and from a rainstorm, that was probably the craziest weather I had encountered on my mission. Get ready to walk. I mean, you're gonna walk a lot, so get used to it. Be open. Don't be afraid. They're not gonna bite you. These people, they're gonna meet you for 2 minutes, invite you into their home, go buy you a drink, and have dinner with you that night after only meeting you for that first time. Just have no fear. Don't worry about making a mistake in the language, because if you do, the people will help you. You know, they love you that much that they'll say, oh, this man is trying to learn my language. You know, that shows them that you love them that much more. So just to have no fear in speaking the language, talking to the people, or trying new things. Fake it. Don't act like you're an RM. At least that's what I try to do. And I would always be in a certain situation where I just felt super awkward. But I would play it off. I would try to say what I think I would have said if I had like been a freshman or something like that. And then as soon as I got home, I would like preach my gospel. I would pray for forgiveness. I would call my dad. I would say, what am I doing? Am I doing something wrong? Because I just felt so weird. But people would always say, you know, oh, you just got back from mission? How long have you been home? I'd be like, oh, 2 months. And they're like, wow, you're not weird at all. But I would say I fake it really well. But I would really be in my bed at home freaking out once I left that awkward situation. So I think the best advice is to kind of play it off and fake it cool until you can go home and be weird by yourself. That's what I did, at least. I was a very picky eater before my mission. I liked meat, potatoes, and bread. And my mom said, I hope you go somewhere foreign where they can really expand your palate. And I said, okay. And so I got down there, and rice and beans, I didn't really like rice and beans before my mission either, but now I love it. I can't live without them. But they had this one food that would be kind of like the lasagna of America, where everyone eats lasagna here. They all love it. There they call it feijoada. And it's so common. And it's like, it was a slave food originally, because the slaves would cook for their masters, and they would give them all the good parts of the pig, like the bacon, the hindquarters, everything that was good about the pig, they would give to their masters, and what was left over, they would make their food out of. So like the snout, the tongue, the ear, the tail, the foot, all that they threw into a pot and cooked it. And that became feijoada. And now most of Brazilians are descendants from slaves, so they eat this food called feijoada. And I remember my first time eating the MTC, and it was all rubbery because it's mostly fat, and I just like, oh, I cannot eat this for 2 years. I would fast that day in the MTC because I didn't want to eat that food. But now I love it. I loved it as soon as I got out of the mission field, and it was different because different people liked different ways. They would be like, oh, I like mine with a little pig's foot, and other people, oh, I don't like pig's foot. It's too heavy for me. And it was interesting to see how they would talk about their food, and I remember they don't waste anything. Any part of the animal they use. Like, I had never eaten cow's foot before in my entire life, and there I got it, and it's called mokoto. And there are different ways to prepare it, but the most common is they make it into a broth, like a very sweet soup, like the ligaments and everything, it'll get all cooked together, and at least this really nice soup. My first time eating mokoto, the member literally just took a cow's foot and cooked it. So I'm sitting there, I'm starving, and I have my rice and beans ready, and she just, bam, cow's foot. Just an actual, like, you picture cow's foot in real life, put that on a plate. And I looked at my companion, I go, Elder, we're going to eat this? He's like, with a smile on your face, Elder. And so it's just, different people interpret the foods there differently. And so I ate it, and it was not the best food I've ever eaten. But then I got the other mokoto where they make it into like a soup, and I loved it. And so it was very different to see the different types of foods that they would make. I mean, I ate chicken's feet. I've eaten every single part of a pig you can imagine. I've eaten bull's intestines with their tongues cooked inside of it, and it sounds gross, but it's really good. And it's totally different to come back home and to be totally fearless in eating any kind of food. If you don't tell me what it is, I'll eat it. And so my favorite food, I think, that I learned was, I think feijoada was probably my favorite. But what was interesting is that there, if you offer someone an egg, like a fried egg, you are calling that person poor, because eggs down there are for only poor people. They're very cheap. And so if you only eat eggs, you are poor. And for us missionaries, we were poor, so we loved it. And so we loved fried eggs and ground beef with bread. That's what we ate a lot of the times at home, not in the members' houses, of course. And so it was very interesting when I remember when I would Skype my family, and they would say, "Really, eggs are for poor people down there? That's interesting." And so it's just different, because we would say, oh, food stamps are for people in poverty. I feel like that's what it would be in Brazil, is, oh, you eat eggs and bread, you're on food stamps. And it's just a different way to see how they lived and how they categorized different foods. I remember I once in a very wealthy house. It was the most rich person I've ever met in my entire mission. And they had like this huge old table full of all this beautiful food, but no rice and beans, which is a staple food for them because it fills you up and it's very cheap. Every Brazilian eats rice and beans, but not the rich, because it's, I don't want to say beneath them, but it's just that they can buy higher quality things, like, I don't know, noodles, like very expensive pastas or something like that. They don't need rice and beans. And I remember sitting at this table and I felt out of place because there was no rice and beans. I was like, we left the house, like my companion, I go, "Are you still hungry?" And he goes, "Yeah." I go, "Because there were no rice and beans, we're not full." And it was very different. And the family would be sitting there and they'd be like, "Oh, I can't remember the last time I had rice and beans." And I was offended. I was like, "I had rice and beans this morning with a fried egg." So I'm the poorest of the poor. But the food there, you can tell how humble a person is. Like, and they won't admit, if you meet a poor person on the street, they will give you the best of what they have. So if the best is what they have is a fried egg and ground beef, and they are offering that means they are very, very, very poor. And they were willing to give you anything. I remember in my first area in that favela, this lady we were teaching, she worked at a family's home in a very far away place, and she had to travel like 3 or 4 buses in a metro to get there. And I remember that night we were going to teach her, and she sat us down. She said, "I have a surprise for you." And she goes in the kitchen, comes back out with her hands behind her back, and she pulls out 2 fruit drinks, one for me, one for my companion. And the eyes of her children just like got as big as dinner plates. Like, they wanted that drink. And she probably worked like an extra 5 or 6 hours to get that enough money to buy that drink for us. And it actually was a very terrible drink. It wasn't good at all, but I drank everything, and I gave the drink to her kids, because I just couldn't stand having them look at me like that and not share. And that they would work so hard for someone, a foreigner nonetheless, to come into their home, teach them a foreign doctrine, and then they would work that much harder just to buy us a little thing, and just to show their appreciation. And it was amazing to me. In Brazil, they kind of have their own little sign language. It's rather interesting, because I remember when I was in MTC and I'd be waiting in line. I know here in America we would, like, you snap your fingers and you hit your hand like that, right? It's just, pass the time. And I was doing the MTC, my teacher told me flat, hey, don't do that ever again. And I was, why? It's just a hand slap. He's like, but down there it was a very ugly hand gesture, very bad thing. And I realized that there were so many unseen things that people would do, like say you're hungry, you wouldn't like pat your stomach like we do in the United States. There you go like this, you say I'm hungry, you want food in your mouth. Or say someone's like annoying, or you don't like that person, like, oh man, they just like a bird chirping in my ear, they would do these things like maybe behind the person's back, like say that person's annoying and they turn their back like, oh man, this is so annoying. Or say you were in trouble and your mom spanked you, and she's like, oh man, my mom. They would do that with their finger. They would slap them like, oh man, we gotta go fast, let's go. They had their own language with their hand gestures, and it was very interesting, because then you caught on to it, and that's how you spoke. So now every single time I see somebody doing that with their hand, I kind of get offended, like, hey, whoa. But then I realize I'm in America and it doesn't matter to me. But down there, you become part of that culture. And so doing this, I still do this sometimes. Like, say I talk to somebody, they kind of rub me the wrong way. I go back to my roommate who I was companions with, like, oh man, they were just rough stuff. And so they have their own kind of subcultures. And or say the food was really good, you'd say, oh, Irma, that was so good. I had a funny one where I was on a division with a brand spanking new elder. He was about 3 days out of the MTC. And so we go to his lunch appointment. It was in his area, but I had passed through there before, so I knew the member. And so we were eating a lot because we were hungry, and he was getting kind of full, and he says, Elder, how do you say you're full? He had forgotten how to say he's full. And so I told him, you tell the Irma, the sister, you say, so feijão, which means only beans. And so the member would always ask, Elder, do you want more? And he would push his plate towards her, and he would just go, just beans. So she just put on like 4 more spoonfuls of beans on his plate, and she would give it back to him, and he would look at me, and I go, Elder, she wants you to eat more. And so he kept on thinking that he was saying, I'm full, but he was saying, give me more beans. And so he ate about 4 more plates of beans until I told him, I was like, you're telling her you want more beans instead of you're full. And so he was sick the rest of the day. But it was super funny because he thought he was serious, and he would be, so feijão, Irma, only beans, please give me beans. And she's like looking at him, okay, Elder, like impressed that he was eating this much food. So that was pretty funny. I couldn't keep it any longer. I told him, I was like, Elder, you're telling her you just want beans. The weather and the climate of Guarulhos would probably be like Sacramento. It would get really hot, but it would get hot, but it wouldn't get very cold. In the winter, it wouldn't get very cold. But when it rained hard. And it's hilly there, and so it just became a waterfall. Wherever their hill was, and it was not a pretty waterfall. It'd be like black water, and it was filled with trash, but it was awesome. But they would wake up, they would have their coffee and a little piece of bread and a little cheese and butter on it. They would eat that, and then they would work. And if it was raining, they probably wouldn't work because they just don't like to work in the rain. I mean, who does? But that was their excuse. Oh, it's raining, I'm not going to work today. Or, oh, it's raining, I don't think I'll go with the missionaries to church today. And so they would wake up, have their breakfast, and they would just sit outside of their shop. Say they were a barber, they would just have a little chair, sit, and talk to the person who had the shop to the next side of them. And they would just sit there and chat and wait for someone to walk up to them and say, hey, I need a haircut. Can you fix my hair? And they would just sit there and they would just gossip about their road. Because everyone on a road they're all very well connected. They all know the people. And so they would say these 2 guys that had a shoe shop and a mechanic right next to each other, they would sit right next to each other on their stools and unbutton their shirts, they would sit there and lean across each other, and they would say, "All right, see Jose down there. He moved in about a year ago, and his house is looking pretty shabby. He needs to paint it. I bet you we could paint it for him." And they would gossip. The women were the worst. They would sit outside. They would scrub their garage floor, clean it, spray it out with the water, and then they would take their clothes, put them on the line. They don't have dryers there. They have washing machines, but they don't have drying. So they put on the clothesline, and they would talk to the other women across the street. They would call everyone daughter or son, like, "Oh, may I feel you? Come here. Oh, my son. Oh, my daughter." And just a very open people. And that's what they would do. They would talk, they would work, and they would just they would be active but not active at the same time. They would be doing something but doing it so passively that it would just not require that much energy. In Guadalupe, everyone in Brazil, they don't have like big business franchises, like where they would have like a sports clips, like a barbershop or anything. Everyone just starts their own barbershop. They would build the building and start their own barbershop in there. Or say they're a mechanic, they would build their own little shop, make a mechanic. They would be a shoemaker, they would build their own little thing. So it's not really a certain type, but there it's just commerce. There they would be doing their own thing, whether they worked at a factory or they would work at the airport, or they had their own little shop. The lunch is the biggest meal of the day. And so the woman would wake up, she would do her cleaning, and then start making lunch. She would take the rice and beans, start cooking that, and then any kind of meat. It would either be beef, pork, fish, chicken, or a mixture of all of those, and make lunch. And then everyone basically kind of shuts down, not quite like the nap time they take in Spain or Argentina, where everyone shuts down for 2 hours of the day and 3 hours a day takes a nap. They don't do that. But everyone takes a break for lunch. So everyone eats their huge lunch, and then everything kind of slows down after that because your stomach's full, you don't really want to work. And so we would be, out in the street trying to talk to people, and they're like, "Oh, nope, I'm too tired. I just ate lunch. I don't really want to talk to you guys right now." But once you said, "Oh, we did too," we would just, "What did you have for lunch?" "We had this." And then you start a conversation, and they would start talking, and that would get them excited. And you would talk to them about their day, what they did, and then you try to teach for the rest of that day until about 6 or 7. And then you usually have like a dinner appointment with a member or some investigator you knew, where you would eat you have like a little soda, maybe a little sandwich, a little cookie, teach another lesson before you had to go home. And then everyone would just be in bed by 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then starts all over the next day. They walk or use the bus. And so that was my first time in my life ever using a city bus. I never had to use it before, and that was an eye-opening experience. Not saying that I was like spoiled or anything, it's just that we don't have that kind of transportation system here, because usually everyone has a car. And so they use the bus. And first time using a bus, being pushed up against somebody you don't even know face to face in the middle of summer, you get real personal with that person. You start talking about the gospel, and they don't really want to hear it. But they use the bus, they walk. And I remember my first district meeting, we had to walk an hour and a half to get there, and I was dying. And I'm like, how do these people do it? And they do it with a huge sack of flour on their back, carrying a baby on the phone, and that's all they do is walk, and that's how they get around. But in the area I was serving in, there was this favela called Inferninho. I don't know if I can, like, Little Hell. I don't know if I can say that. But that's what it was called. And I remember being there, going down there for the first time, and it's on a steep hill. And we were walking down it, and everyone would stop what they were doing and look at us. The two white guys wearing shirts and ties with backpacks. What are they doing? Are they from the government? Are they spies? What are they doing here? And once we crossed this bridge over this river to get to this person's house, like 10 guys just surrounded us. And I'm instantly freaking out. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how to speak to these people. And he says, "What are you guys doing here? What do you guys want?" We're missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're missionaries. We're representatives of Christ. We wanted to teach this person. Do you know if she's home? And I'm like, oh yeah, she's home. You're good. You have safe passage. And we're like, whoa, okay. And he said, after we were leaving, he says, you guys are allowed to come into our neighborhood because we can sense that there's something good about you guys, and we want that in our neighborhood. And he says, if anything is wrong, if anyone tries to mess with you, you don't go to the cops because they're not going to do anything. You come to us, okay? And so we had our friends in that little favela, and they were completely content in living in a brick house as big as this room with 10 kids. And I mean, there were holes in the bricks. There was mice running across the floor, and their couch was sagging, and that's what they lived in. And they were completely okay with that. Yes, they knew of people that had more things. They had a bigger house, but they had each other, and they had a little rice and beans in the pot, and they were okay with that. They didn't need to have great things. That's what I really realized about the people, not only of Guarulhos or of Sao Paulo, but in Brazil in general, that these people, they don't need material things. They would just need their family, and that was okay with them. I was in my third area, a little area called Kabusu, and we were playing soccer with the zone. And we were playing soccer, and I fell, and I had twisted my knee. I'd actually dislocated it. I fell, and as I fell, I popped it back into place. And so I thought it wasn't that minor, but I limped over to the sidelines, and I said, I'm done. Can someone give me some ice? And I get ice. And then it started to swell instantly. And I thought, okay, that's bad, but it'll go down. It'll go away. And so I walked on it for another 3 days. And in my area, the hills are like, like that, up and down. And so I walked on those things for 3 days until I couldn't take it anymore. And so I called President. I said, President, I fell on P-Day, and I twisted my knees. Like, and you're telling me this now, Elder? You didn't tell me this when I happened. I said, I'm sorry, President. So I go to the hospital. I get an X-ray, and there's no breaking. No bones are broken. And I look at the doctor, and I go, great, so I'm okay, right? I don't need anything, no surgery, because the President said if you need surgery, you're going home. I said, no surgery, right, to the doctor, and he said, nope, no surgery on your bones. He said, I bet you 9 out of 10 you busted a ligament in there. And that hit me hard, because I had about just over a year on my mission. So I had like 11 months left, and I did not want to go home early at all. And so the hardest part was I had to stay in like this cardboard cast for 2 weeks. I had to go get an MRI to see if there was ligament tear, and so we got the MRIs, and I couldn't walk while I was on this cast, so I had to stay in bed for 2.5 weeks, and that is just suicide for a missionary. It was the worst 2.5 weeks of my life. And so we get the MRI results back, and I had to send them to a doctor in the United States, and I sent him to my family doctor who had operated on my left knee, not my right knee, and he went through it, and he said, okay, here are the options. You can come home and get surgery on it right now, and that'd be the end of your mission. Or, he said, what I think you are going to do is you get an immobilizer, and you wear that for 8 weeks, no weight bearing, and you can continue your mission. But if you fall and hurt yourself again, you have to come home. And I said, I didn't even hear the first option. I said, okay, we're going with option 2. And so I had to go to the mission office, and I stayed there for 2 transfers, not working, and that was probably the hardest thing. The hardest thing was almost going home, having that thought bearing on my mind for 2.5 weeks of, I might go home, my mission might be over. Having that mental war was really, really difficult, but the Lord works in mysterious ways, and a miracle happened, and I could stay on my mission and finish the 2 years. So I received my mission call in April of 2012. I was a freshman, BYU, living in Hillman Halls, and I got the call, ran home, called everyone, said I got the call, and I was going to Skype my family that night. Skyped and told them about the call, and I was only going to report to the MTC in Brazil in August of that year, so I had another 4.5 months of waiting to get my visa, and so we had all that time. I was going to go home and work. So the semester ends, I go home, I start working as a lifeguard, and making money, just having fun with my friends, spending time with family before I could go. And then I think it was one day in June, Dad came in home. I was working out in the yard. He said, all right, family meeting right now. And we've only had like 3 or 4 family meetings in our entire life. And that means either somebody died, we're moving, or something else happened. And so I instantly just prepared myself for what was going to happen. And I thought it was my family moving away because they were renting a house at the time, and they were just going to move somewhere else. And to me, I was like, okay, I'm going on my mission, so it's no big deal. They sat us down. Me, my little brother, my little sister, my older sister was up here, and my dad told us that he had cancer. That was pretty tough. He said he had stomach cancer, and that he didn't know how much time that he had, and that scared me because I had 2 months before I was supposed to leave. And I didn't know how to take it because he said he had kept it from us up until that point. He only told my mom. And so I was torn between serving and him not making it to the end of my mission and not going on my mission. And so I really learned about receiving answers to prayers before my mission. It only grew on my mission, but I needed to know if I was supposed to go or not, or if I was supposed to stay home and help my dad. And that night, I got down on my knees and I talked to my Father in heaven, and I asked him if I should stay or if I should go, because my dad's stomach cancer, he had 2 tumors, one the size of a golf ball, the other size of a grape. And they were going to see if it had penetrated his stomach lining. If it had, which the doctors guessed about a 75% chance that it already had, by the size of the tumors, that he only had months to live. And so it was a very trying time. But that night, I prayed, and much to my surprise, I went to sleep very, very quickly and soundly. And I just woke up the next morning with the most resounding feeling of peace and calm. And I took that as my answer to go. And I told my dad the next morning that I was going to serve, and that I knew everything was going to be okay because I was going to go serve the Lord for 2 years, the people of Brazil. And we hugged and we embraced, and to this day he's cancer free. So that was a real testimony builder for me in my life and for the rest of my mission. Man, are you lucky. You are so blessed to be called to the wonderful nation of Brazil, especially Sao Paulo. There is such a mixing pot of people there, and they're going to love you. And if you try your hardest to learn the language, be an obedient missionary, be humble, and they're going to absolutely fall in love with you. You're going to be a missionary who is remembered throughout generations. And there are going to be good days on the mission, and there are going to be bad days on the mission. But those good days heavily outweigh the bad days, and you're going to forget the bad days even happened, and just remember those good days, the days you met an elect family, or the days where your investigator committed to baptism, or the day where you feel like you clicked with the language. Those are the days that you're going to remember. And those are the days that you're going to cherish for the rest of your life. I know I do. And I know you're going to have a great experience. You're going to learn a new language, learn a new culture about a new kind of people that you didn't even know existed, that you didn't even know you had these kinds of brothers and sisters in your eternal family. But they will love you, and you will love them. I know I did. And I know that the work you're about to get set to doing is the truth, and that this church is the true gospel on the earth today, that it was restored by the hands of a prophet called of God in the year 1830, that Joseph Smith really did see God the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. And that I know that, and that I know the people that I taught could feel the Spirit when I would bear my testimony. And I know they will feel the Spirit there when you bear your testimony, albeit in broken Portuguese. The Spirit will fill the blanks. He will make the people feel your testimony and how true it is. and that it will help them exponentially in their lives. And I know this to be true. And you're going to be great. I love you. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.